All right. that Just Druid part always gets me every time I watch the video and I see that Just Druid part. It's like just do it, for Nike, but it's just Druid for Hearthstone. But yeah, check that out, guys. And the Value Town discount code works. It gives you 10% off. So yeah, sign up today if you want to get better. All right, next up we've got a big point of discussion, at least for the last day or two, that's involving Kripp's last video. When Kripp makes I think some critiques of Hearthstone, it's always makes a big splash in terms of the community, in terms of Reddit, and it always spawns a lot of discussions. So, the ripples come over here to Value Town too. So I figured we would talk about it a little bit. So, it was titled, problems with Hearthstone right now. And it's one of those things where I feel like after a certain amount of time with an expansion, we start to see, these type of critiques start to pop up, no matter how happy you are with an expansion. And that's kind of where we are right now. So the first thing I think Kripp talked about was just RNG generally, and RNG has always been an aspect of Hearthstone. We've talked about it ad nauseum, just whether it's Ragnaros or, whatever it is, right? It's been an issue or just something that we've been talking about, and it's a big part of Hearthstone. So I guess my question to you guys is the RNG different right now? Is it just as problematic as has been in the past?
Well, the long and short of it. You want the long or the short of it? Like I've got. I'll try to be concise and stop me at any point. Okay, if I'm rambling like I usually am. The criticism of RNG goes as far back as Sylvanas and Rag in the closed beta or whatever. Like we had some of that. Knife Juggler was a piece of shit design. It's still a piece of shit design. It's just not played. We have a bunch of those cards historically that were problematic RNG pieces, and then we discover in League of Explorers. We came upon a mechanic that could be random and create a sense of agency in the player and test their skill, quote unquote, which is, yes, one of the arguments, but truly it's mostly for the fun of discovering cards that aren't in your deck. It's really the fun aspect of it. The digital medium meets randomness, meets agency. It's like perfect for a mechanic in Hearthstone. In fact, it's so good that they modeled Adapt around it. They said, why come up with something else? Let's just limit the amount of stuff you can discover. It's literally the same mechanic, except now it's stats. And I'm not saying this as a negative thing. I think it's a super positive thing. I think Discover is such a good mechanic for Hearthstone that is the only reason why we saw Inspire come up in TGT, and Blizzard said, fuck off, we're never printing another Inspire card again. And when Discover was created, people loved it so much, they went back and made one for every set. They made like 2 in the following set, 2 or 3 in the next one, and now we've had like 7 in the current set. And all of them have very different applications. So Discover as a mechanic, much like Adapt, is RNG done probably the best that Hearthstone's had it before. Now, the thing about Discover is that when you have cards like Jeweled Scarab, they're very specific. You discover a 3-cost card, or a card like Dark Peddler that discovers on average PO or Soulfire. You expect it to come out that way. When you have a very narrow set of cards you can discover from, those cards I think are cool. They make sense. But here's one card that bothered me back when Discover came up, and that was back in League of Explorers, Ethereal Conjurer. 5 mana, 6/3, discover a spell. What's a spell? It's a secret, it's a stall, it's a self-healing, it's ice block, it's face damage, it's a board clear. You don't fucking know what it's going to be. So the issue that people really run into right now is, yes, my opponent's playing a bunch of stuff that's not in their deck. Primordial Glyph for discovering cards, Babbling Book for creating cards. All these things are true. But to a large extent, and Swashbuckler, and those are kind of bad cards. They're not discovered. They're just random generation. But the general issue, I think, with this is there's a lot of cards that exist right now that don't discover specific things. Stonehill Defender is another story. I think that card is okay. It's very powerful, but it's not going to pit you against something you never could have anticipated. No, you expect 3 Tyrions. You're ready to double Devolve and Hex. Like, that's going to be coming up. But it's when the mage just gets, 2 Babbling Books, 2 Primordial Glyph, and then just jams an extra Cabal Courier in there, and you just die to double, triple Pyro that weren't there. That feels bad. So I understand the criticisms about RNG, but if you think Hearthstone currently has too much bad RNG, I think Hearthstone is not the game for you and you should leave. We've never had such deck diversity, ever, period, ever. Classes are so well represented aside from Warlock across the board. You can climb to Legend with anything, and that is despite the presence of randomness. Hearthstone will always have RNG because without it, the aggressor's advantage and the way tempo is set up with the player initiating aggression having the advantage creates very, very dull matches. I go back to the days of Grim Patron, Combo Druid, and Handlock to exemplify what a game without any RNG looks like. And all I can think of is community saying, this game fucking sucks, man. Like, it's always the same shit. And the truth is, you may be right in that it's always the same stuff, but it's very difficult to create an environment where you have 8 decks that are on the same power level that have 0 variance involved in them. And I am personally like at the point now in Hearthstone where I could not ask for more. I think I am finally, we've reached a point in Hearthstone. I mean, I could ask for tournament mode and everything, but as far as card design goes, I am finally satisfied. Like I'm looking at Hearthstone and there's a few outliers here and there, but nothing that makes me go, fuck this game, I'll quit it. Yeah. I think Hearthstone's fantastic, and the RNG that's existing is to me acceptable.
All right. Rat.
It might be because Noxious has been playing too much Gwent, you know, he hasn't been playing enough Hearthstone. I don't play any Arena. Like straight up, I don't do it. I don't play Arena ever.
Yeah, me neither,
so
really.
I don't know about his complaints about the Arena being random.
Well,
I've heard from some. Do you play Arena? Speak on this?
I don't play much Arena either, but what I was going to add to it before, I'll let you get to your point in a second, is that with the RNG, one of the comments that he did make was that he just felt like a lot of these RNG cards that you're talking about, like Discover, just tend to skew towards a value that's greater than, just like on the high side of things, right?
Yeah, so I was going to address that.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where it's just, you're just going to play these cards and they're just automatically going to be in your deck type of thing. But go ahead.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. Okay, I can address. I'm going to address that. Actually, I think that's one of the worst points he makes in the video, like by far, or a lack of understanding rather. So I don't play Arena. I don't know how bad it is in Arena, the random effects, how bad it is. I think that the increase of spells in general in Arena has changed a lot for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But from I guess I don't know, not philosophical, but just an analytical perspective, I can look at the Arena rankings and see that Kripp's still listed as 40, despite the fact that he streams on no delay, despite the fact that people snipe him, despite the fact that he doesn't necessarily choose the class that's going to get him the most wins every time he enters Arena. So as far as him complaining about not being able to win as much, he's winning quite often.
He doesn't complain about winning.
He's doing pretty well.
He's not complaining about winning.
He makes it sound like you can't win because the cards are random.
Well, he's making it sound like you can't win with certain, like specifically certain classes. When he's talking about Arena, at least.
He said that a couple of classes that you can't win with at all.
Yeah,
definitely. Which I don't know about, but I'm saying he's doing pretty well for himself in Arena.
Yeah, I don't think. That's.
And the average is about a little bit lower, but about what it was before. To your point about the random effects being too strong, prior to the set, we saw those random effects existed. Cabal Courier, Babbling Book, they weren't played. Now, two things could have happened. Other cards could have gotten worse, or the way that the cards work favors them, or actually a third thing, and that's that the random cards they're generating got better. Now, within Mage, without a question, the average Mage card is better. Just straight up. The average Mage spell is a lot better than it used to be in terms of Babbling Book, but that's an easy fix. You just bring out Mage cards that are worse, and then all of a sudden Babbling Book gets a lot worse. I also think that Babbling Book isn't a particularly strong card. Some people actually cut it from the list. Like he said, you play 2 Babbling Books and everything because it's just strong, but that's actually just not accurate.
That's not true, yeah.
And there's a card you want to complain about within the Mage class. It's actually just Primordial Glyph. The card's just insane, and it has an element of randomness. And it takes it a step further, where not only can it give you any card, but it actually reduces the mana cost. So now you're looking at a whole new range that you're not used to dealing with. And on top of that, the card's incredibly efficient. It's mathematically good. On top of having the element of surprise, on top of having the inability to play around it. Even if it saw a small scope of spells that you could discover from, it would still be good because of
Yeah,
the fact
like
that
the
it reduced it by
discount is
2.
crazy. Like
Exactly.
yeah, you can argue about the discount totally.
So this
Um,
type of thing makes it a lot
yeah.
better. But it's mostly the mage class that we see this
Well,
this
he
with,
talked about
not
the
the other classes necessarily.
he talked about some of the other ones too, and I think it does revolve around the newer cards that have this kind of discover RNG. Are in these specific classes that he's talking about. You know, like Paladin, for
Well,
instance, right?
Well,
Paladin.
when you look into Paladin, I'd challenge you to I'd ask you what Discover are you talking about? Because I don't think that Ivory Knight is being complained about by anyone.
No, Ivory Knight,
It-
Hydrologist, Stone Defender's better.
Hydrologist has 5 decisions that you can choose from, and they're all pretty consistent. And I think it allows for an element of play. I think one of the worst Discover mechanics is actually discovering Poisonous in terms of arena or in
That
standard.
is toxic.
I
Literally,
think
no
that
pun
Poisonous
intended.
should definitely not have been an option
Yeah,
available
agreed.
to you.
Agreed.
That's why we see this mid-range Paladin Murloc deck be so effective, is that you can't edge it out because you can edge it out often, okay, with Primordial Drakes, and I get that you can clear their board or whatever, but some amount of the time you won't be able to edge it out because they'll get Poisonous. And even if you build your deck to beat that deck, there's still a percentage they're going to get Poisonous. And if you play against 7 Murloc Paladins in one tournament, it doesn't matter if your deck beats them efficiently. If one of them gets Poisonous, and all of a sudden you pick up a second loss and you're not in the top 8 anymore.
Yeah.
As an example, like you could have a good overall percentage, but then if they hit the Poisonous, they just beat you, which feels bad. And I think that has a bigger impact than some of the other
Yeah, I'm just saying, just generally,
choices.
I feel like the new cards skew a little bit more towards specific classes, and that's why it affects arena so much. It doesn't affect standard quite as much because there are a lot of. I mean, we're just talking about RNG cards at this point, right? So, you know, from that standpoint, I think there are just a few of them that are benefiting. Like Warlock. Warlock doesn't benefit from anything RNG.
Right,
Like,
and that's been
it's
historically why the class was
Warrior
so
doesn't
solid.
either.
Like aside from the
And-
Kazakus era, really, I think when Kazakus mattered a ton in the mirror match, we're like, hey, we got the best potion. Hey, I got it, nailed it, and I win. Like there was never a time really where Warlock, aside from Disco, I think Disco Lock with like the best discards, was one of the few random mechanics, but. If you look at Miracle Rogue, for instance, in its evolution, like it's not wrong that there's more RNG now than there used to be, right? Like Miracle Rogue now has 4 RNG cards: double Swashbuckler, double Hallucination. Yay! That's like 13% of their deck now has an effect of unpredictability tied to them. And we had the early Quest Rogue list that ran Swashbuckler. If they got the right outcome, you just got screwed. Like I'm not personally a big fan of Babbling Book and Swashbuckler. I do not like those designs very much.
We've talked about it.
We've talked about them, but the point is like
Yeah.
those feel like the big offenders of why even bother playing around
be-
anything? And
I mean, that's definitely true, but those cards are also weak. Like,
right,
if
they
you wanna,
are.
like evaluate. They're not like he says that they're just strong, so you just put them in and it's obvious. But people don't want to play Swashbuckler because it's bad. They've taken it out of Quest Rogue list. Like it's not just this card that's super powerful. Like you play it in Miracle because it grabs you with Patches. Patches wasn't in
Exactly.
the game. Swashbuckler wouldn't see play in Miracle Rogue either. So it's not necessarily that these cards are so powerful. It's just that they happen to find a space right now.
It's a value card.
And then it becomes
Yeah.
but it's not a value card because even it plus the random card isn't worth a card.
No, that's
Back.
the thing. It's Patches is carrying Swashbuckler in a nutshell. If we had to like put it that way, Swashbuckler is getting carried by Patches, and like that's a valid criticism that it sucks that we have like you want to play Patches, so what are you forced to do? Look at 1-drop Pirates. Hey, what springs out? Well, Small Time Buccaneer or Southsea Deckhand or Swashbuckler. Which one of these can you play on turn 1? Swashbuckler and Small Time Buccaneer. I'm not going to play a 1-1 that doesn't survive and doesn't give me anything anymore since the nerf, so I'm going to be playing Swashbuckler, which is just the logical outcome.
Yeah.
So the criticism is it sucks that the Pirates we're playing are the ones that generate random cards, but I don't think the validity of criticizing the power level of the card itself is there yet. Like it's
Also,
Go
to
ahead.
take a step further, he had a thing recently where he said standard's pretty straightforward. You just make a deck and then you net deck or whatever and you play it.
Just me.
But I mean, he thinks it's from time and time again we've seen that Kripp thinks that standard is this simple thing, but I mean, that's not the case. And the RNG sometimes adds skill as much as people want to believe. Now you can evaluate it at different differently. That people think about it differently. Like Noxious took a little bit of a harder stance on Discover. A lot of people think it's a skillful mechanic. I personally am more leaning towards Noxious's end, where I think that Discover, the majority of the time, is about as equally skillful as a Babbling Book. I think the Discover is sometimes obvious. There's obviously decisions that are tough with Discover that come up and are tough choices. But I think that having to make use of a mediocre or average spell that comes off a Babbling Book is also a pretty skillful task sometimes. If you look at someone like Kalento, he's very good at getting value out of random effects that aren't good. Like that's something that he just happens to be good at. And I think that if you ask Strifecro, he'd say that's something that he's good at. Someone that plays Tempo Mage a lot, APX Void, you might know of him. He's also somebody who's good at getting finding a way to make use of these spells and finding the best way to use them. It's like an obvious example I could use is Shatter. And you could be like, well, it's obvious that you need a freeze effect to proc Shatter, so you need to save your Frostbolt. But what if you have Shatter, but you can't actually ever use it, so you're not supposed to save your Frostbolt? And then you just Shatter just goes dead. Like that's not like it creates decisions. Basically, is what I'm saying. I think there is some skill in maneuvering these decisions properly. I guess the randomly generated effects.
Yeah, I mean, of course there is. It's just obviously he's an arena player too, so it's going to be skewed more towards that. In arena generally,
definitely.
You have to play with these cards. I mean, you don't always have to play with these cards because generally you will be picking better cards than some of the cards that we do get from these random cards. But generally arena does just have more of a
it's very high variance
adaptation. High variance, having to play with cards you haven't played with or not familiar with. Can't play with every single game that you play like you do on ladder or standard ladder. So arena does present, I think,
as high variance as it is. He's still getting the same average wins. So I just you can tell me this, but like I don't see I need more from you to believe you, I guess. And when you come with facts like this, I guess.
Well, I mean, so I think we may be interpreting this video as just Hearthstone is in terrible, crazy bad shape, which in the end of the video, he does say it's heading in that direction. But
he says this every single video, man, and people are more happy than ever. Like I would challenge.
That's how you get views, man.
I would. Okay, so now we're getting to the heart of the subject. You went with a meme. So that's how you get views. But honestly, let's look at it from a perspective where, this is a completely psychological perspective. But let's say I'm enjoying Hearthstone and I'm enjoying the game.
Yeah. Which a lot of people listening to the show they are
exactly. And I have a story to go along with this after. Actually, I'll start with the story because it makes more sense. I played at DreamHack Summer last year. I played against RDU. Now, I lost to RDU because he basically got lucky, and I wasn't upset about it after losing. I was completely fine with losing, and that's just part of how it goes, Yeah. Another round, I had made a mistake that lost me that round, and I think that when you go into a tournament like that, you get one loss to randomness, and then you aren't afforded any other losses. So if you make one on your own, then that's your fault. Now, after I lost to him, RDU said to me, "Why aren't you more upset? Do you know how lucky I had to get to win that game? I had to hit a 50-50 into a 50-50 into a 50-50 into a 1 in 11 into a 1 in 10.
Wow.
And he goes, "Seriously, the chances of me winning that game are less than 1%, and you're not even mad right now." I was so upset after that because I was mad that he wanted me to be mad and I wasn't mad. All of a sudden I was like, you know what? I should be upset. And then I was like, yeah, you're right. Screw this game, like
that was bullshit.
And it's like, to a certain extent, this Kripp video can accomplish the same effect. Even if I'm enjoying the game, let's say I'm someone who likes Kripp, I'm enjoying the game, I'm playing it on my own, I'm having fun. All of a sudden Kripp tells me about this, and I'm like, the next Babbling Book I see, I'm like, I heard about this card. Fuck this card.
You got red pilled, bro. You got red pilled.
He got a Paddling Book off of it. Now, I understand that could be like, well, that's because the video is true, but it's also some confirmation of bias. And Kripp plays more than any of his viewers, probably not any, but like the majority of his viewers, like by far. So he's experiencing the game through a sped up cycle, I guess, so to speak. And he's kind of putting his views that he's gathered after an extremely high amount of playtime to people who don't have an extreme amount of playtime. And I'd argue that some of them, their experiences are even being tainted or ruined. I think they would have more fun if they just didn't watch the video and just play Hearthstone naturally.
That's going to be, I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know if I see things in the same way because, I mean, we do have experts, and experts are the ones that have played more than, you know, why do people watch experts? Why do people watch YouTube videos? This is because we view them that way, and we view them as somebody who does know the game more than we do. It's kind of like net decking, right? Net decking, you're losing out on a ton of discovery too by net decking, but people do it because they just want to kind of find out like what's at the end of the, you know, the tunnel here.
But it's about the journey.
It is about the journey, but most people don't understand that at all. You
but
know,
there's
they
still
don't.
a journey when you net deck. There's not a journey if you tell me that like the game is garbage. Like I'm like, oh, what? You've played for 100 hours in the last week, and now you're telling me that the game is bad? Like, well, why am I even playing? And then I see the effects that he talks about, and it comes up. Like, I really think that like you're not as angry about Babbling Book as he is until you watch the video. Like, and I think that
well, he obviously has influence, so yes, he can affect how people think. And at the same time, that's kind of why he does these videos. You know, he kind of prefaced it, right, with, you know, he's doing this video because he feels like open discussion about this type of thing is important. And I mean, I do agree with that aspect of it. Is that, you know, if he's not happy with the game, he should voice his opinions on it.
But he's never been happy with the game except for at the very beginning, and it doesn't matter anything that you talk to him about with statistics or nothing. It's just never going to be that way.
No,
and
I think he's had moments of happiness. He's just not as...
The thing is, like...
Everyone wants to be mad at Hearthstone, man. Everyone does.
I know, but the thing is
that video, and they want to be like, yes, Kripp, yes, rail on Blizzard. Tell me about the game's bullshit. Tell me about how I lost the Babbling Book.
I mean, that's our fault too. Yeah, that's our fault too, because, you know, there are videos of Kripp's where he is praising Hearthstone, especially like, you know, early on this expansion, and maybe even last expansion when Arena was in great shape. You know, so there have been moments where he has made those videos, but people never talk about those videos. Nobody ever talks about when people are positive about things.
Why would I talk about that video? He just put out a video where he talked about that video. He says at the beginning, he's like, 3 weeks into the expansion, I said everything was great. Everything was good. That was the best expansion.
I know, but nobody talked about it 3 weeks ago.
But then the week after, I realized.
Okay, dude. Here's what came up.
He says in the video. He says in the video that 4 weeks or 6 weeks into the Main Streets of Gadgetzan meta, that he already knew what was coming, and then that it took other people a month to realize that like the meta was going to be bad, and that he realized this. And it's like, no slight to Kripp, but I mean, like rank 14 ladder, like it's not that he can't get to ladder, it's just that he's not playing at that level. And like to be like, oh, I can see where the game's going when you're not even like in the part of like the ladder that's dictating where the game's going is like, I don't know. It's just, well, it's not that you can't be educated. Talking about standard ladder, can't, I mean, know what you're doing without being a high rank, but it's like he's like, I don't know. It's just kind of preposterous to be like, to tell you that he has videos praising it when he says that his videos praising it are the honeymoon phase. He says that in this video, basically, that his videos praising it are the honeymoon phase. Sure.
Right, Noxious.
And that the game always comes back to a negative point.
So what?
What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like the current state of Hearthstone, you know, the RNG that's in it, you know, within 3 to 4 days of playing the Ungoro expansion, you kind of have a good idea that there's going to be a lot more of those outcomes, because we'd seen a lot of decks come up that just ran random cards. Like, you know, within a few days, you know, Eloise got rank 1 legend with that new Miracle Rogue, and I played against it. I just get completely RNG'd by hallucinations and swashbucklers. And I thought to myself, this is it. Like, this is the time where every deck has a component of variance. You know, we no longer have any patron decks around. Right. And at the beginning of the expansion, that was true, because most decks were on the mid-range control side, running a whole, aside from Pirate Warrior, it was just like a bunch of decks that at least ran swashbuckler for rogues. And then over time that changed, you know, no longer were you getting, you know, randomly killed by some priest guy who lyred everything perfectly. Sometimes you do. We got the perfect shadow visions and a, you know, 3 out of 6 of pulling the right spells. Like everything in the early days was very high variance that way, and I thought this is it. Like, this is the set with the most RNG. But I'm looking at the tournament meta, and a lot of it really is like aggro druid, 0 variance, aside from like the adapt on Ravizor runs and shit. And then you've got Pirate Warrior, Quest Rogue, super consistent decks, 0 variance aside from the card draw. And I'm like, it's true that when you play those slower decks, you give people the chance to fuck you. Like, you just give them the chance to discover cards, and that's just the nature of the control games in Hearthstone. But people bitched when J-Druid was implemented. They said, well, that's a boring linear control deck. We want something fun. You give them something fun, they say, well, there's too much over RNG. Well, what the fuck do you want? Like, you don't want freeze mage because it's fun. It's not fun and interactive. You don't, but it's true. They don't want anything.
Like, they never want what they have.
J-Druid is not a good example
always
of
greater.
that, though. I mean,
okay, but like, to take what Noxious is saying, like, these cards on average are pretty consistent. Like, you run Cabal Courier not because you want to be good against aggro, because you want to be good against control. Like, the cards are consistent. He talks about Lyra. Anyone who's played Priest a lot recently sees how, on average, Lyra is pretty much the same thing. You literally hold it with spells against control when your other game plan doesn't work, and then you hope that it bails you out. That's the point of the card. So when I get the spells that win me the game, it's actually, no, I put Lyra in my deck, and I made a decision to hold on to these spells usually to get to a point where I use Lyra's value engine to get me back into the game. The cards have pretty consistent effects on game states, even though they are grabbing random cards. And as far as, like, them affecting win rates, I mean, or like the win rate of Hearthstone overall. I've talked about it a year and a half ago before Pavel won BlizzCon. Pavel just 5-0'd the EU versus CN. Like, obviously you can say that he's getting lucky, but he's also consistent. He still has a 73% win rate. His win rate ran up a percentage over the last 6 months. Obviously it's not much. It's not like he's played a ton of games, but overall he's played a ton of games like in his career, and he still has an incredibly high win rate. Like, there is skill out there, and like,
there's plenty of skill. It's just like, again, the skill has a lot to do with I mean, it's not explicit, you know, like we talked about this on previous episodes of Value Town. The skill that's having to be applied are behind this, you know, like in the minds of the players, you know, having to predict and having to figure out at least what kind of cards might he be getting, you know, like, okay, if he plays Primordial Glyph, now I have to adjust all possibilities, right? And playing around those type of things. So there's a lot of things going on that people just don't see on the screen.
Well, it's incredibly easy not to see that when the players who are seeing it don't really make content, and the people who aren't seeing it push out content twice a day.
Well, that's why they love Firebat and Zalay casting. You know,
I was gonna say, you know, when Firebat and Zalay, that's one of the big upsides. Is like when you have somebody like Firebat who plays meme decks on stream and then has very solid knowledge of the game, regardless, because he keeps track and keeps himself up to date at the very least of what the meta's like. Even if he doesn't play actively at the top 100, if he doesn't care to get there. He's still one of those players that people trust the opinion of, and I think Hearthstone overall, like if I look back at the days of say Patron Warrior, right, like that was probably the era where like pure skill was the most important, and there was very little variance in the outcome of the game. For that. Highest win rates I think on the ladder at that point were like 66 to 67. Talking to Firebat about that, and right now it's somebody. No, but something like that. It was
the win rates are different now. They've changed the ladder though. When they changed the ladder, it had a huge difference. I see this like all the time with pros.
But they've gone down now.
Win rates are, yes, because they changed the ladder.
They changed the ladder
system.
Makes it go down,
exactly. Though. Because of the way you're paired now, if you're in top 100, you usually only
precisely.
top 100. So you have to have
I was going to bring that up
to get there.
Yeah. So you need like basically you can't just farm people basically. If you're hyper consistent, you always get paired to where the ideal, of course, that the MMR system is a 50-50. So as they're getting better with that, the win rates decrease. But I feel like we're in a very good compromise phase between, you know, Patron meta and Dr. Boom Shredder meta. I personally hate a GVG with all my heart, my passion. Just like my interest in Hearthstone decreased every single time somebody dropped Dr. Boom on the board. Like every single time I just went, yep, not fucking looking at that. Nope, not interested. Nope, this sucks. And it was every game, so there was nothing.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't even mind Dr. Boom. I like, you know, when everyone
I minded it at the
mage
time.
And the blast mage hit all the right targets.
Yeah. I mean, the mech mages and the mech, just all those were
unstable portal. I mean, we're talking about the whole era now. Like the era of GVG was the most toxic. Zoo was running jugglers. You had Soulfire randomly discarding shit. You had like
nobody loved that,
blast mage. Nobody liked it. Nobody.
That's
so. When I look at the current state of Hearthstone, I'm thinking there is RNG, but it's so. Like it's so focused and narrowed down and controlled that it doesn't bother me. Yeah. It triggers me when I got killed early in the expansion by a quest row, completes the quest, has 0 cards in hand, plays Swashbuckler, gets living mana, a bunch of 5/5s. I flip a shit because, you know, what are the odds that they get living mana? It's one of those crazy scenarios, like, but the truth is, like, if I replay that scenario 100 times, I'm good to go. And it shouldn't happen repeatedly. It shouldn't happen like every single game that you get Swashbuckler into Living Mana with a completed quest. So I'm just okay with it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm generally happy. I'm generally happy with the game too. I mean, I'm I've been having a lot of a good time playing it. I don't play it 10 hours a day though. So I am more like
true.
what you're
That's
talking about.
That's what I'm trying to say. Well,
so,
if you keep watching videos where people tell you the games suck, you don't even have to play.
But
10
that's any
hours
game. See, that's the thing, and that's another point that he made. I mean, we need to talk about Heroic Brawl in a second, but that's another point that he made is that, that's kind of, I led this discussion with, this is kind of that period where we're after the honeymoon period. It's 6 weeks in, and this is when people start, or things start stabilizing, and people start getting bored of just what's going on or what the meta is. And,
but there's a lot of people that still enjoy it.
I know.
Just didn't watch videos telling them not to.
And that's the truth, dude. That was the truth even, during Karazhan when, we said it was the worst. There were still like tons of people that loved Hearthstone even during that time. So that's always the case. And these are the type of people that listen to shows like Value Town and, Angry Chicken and everything. And the thing is when it comes to the 6 weeks thing, it brings up the discussion of just releasing things at a specific increment. And I alluded to this like months ago where it'd be great if Blizzard just figured out where is that point after every single expansion on average that people start getting antsy again, and the criticism and the negativity starts coming out. And then boom, that's when you're supposed to release something again, at least something, come out with some kind of change, whether it's like a nerf buff, whatever. And I feel this 6 to 8 weeks is about right. It's,
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
then you have more content, so people need to pay for more content. We know how that goes.
No, just change the existing cards. Just change whatever. Just change the classic.
You mean like in a balance patch every 6
like
weeks?
Right now, I don't think any of the pro players are like, these are the best decks. It's just they could literally play something next week. Like you say, like the meta is like stabilizing, but I mean not really. We're not
completely.
Maybe not completely, but maybe in 2 to 4 weeks. Maybe we do.
I mean, I brought it up before. Like we argued, like he said, there's no new decks in Standard in like a month, but yet we hadn't had a new deck. Like I just don't buy into it, man. I never.
I mean, there are variations.
There's points where I have bought into this, but I don't really buy into it.
Remember Water Rogue. This is gonna be forever my go-to. And people say there's never any. Remember Water Rogue. Yeah. That deck just came out of a dry, stale meta and said, "Fuck all of you! I'm climbing to rank 1," and no one saw it coming. Really, a few people thought. The meta was solved and everything was already set.
It would have been very easy for someone not to discover Gunther Mage, for instance. The Mage that could have easily popped up later on.
Even Secret Mage, Jesus.
And Secret Mage is a little bit more built. That's a little bit more like that. I think that it would come out eventually. But there are deck lists that don't come out eventually because they're not. So
I'm not saying we're in the state right now. Like I'm just saying this is a general solution to because. This first expansion is the best one. This one's going to have the most legs out of any expansion this year because we had the reset too. The next expansion is going to have a shorter period before, things start to stabilize. I'm happy that we're not in that stabilized state, but I'm just saying like we still need to, they still need to be thinking about that solution in my opinion. Kripp I think Kripp's sentiments, I mean, it might not be the most popular sentiments, but it does seem to be a trend that does happen, especially on Reddit and things like that. So it's a recurring conversation that probably needs to be had. We definitely have it on this show like plenty of times.
It's very interesting because it has a lot to do with how you consume Hearthstone, which is all I've been trying to point out.
Yeah.
Like, if you spent the time and it's like, those people who don't buy guides to play solo player games?
Yeah.
It's like you're buying a guide and reading it thoroughly to play every single game you play. Like, and then you ended up beating it quickly and you were like, well, that game's super easy.
Yeah.
It's like, you just don't, that's how you experience Hearthstone, but you don't experience other games like that. And then people expect like how difficult is it to make even if you release extra cards, like to make the game good for like a long stretch of like weeks or months, or like as fresh as it is when a new expansion, like it's just not a thing because of the way that people consume the game. They play 10 hours a day and then they produce content and then people look at the deck list and people read about how to. I know it's the culture, but I'm saying like we need to realize that that's the culture and realize the like effect that it has.
You're
I know you can
setting
adjust-
yourself up for it,
Okay,
basically.
so here's the
it's not
thing.
an accident.
and you can adjust to the culture is what you're saying, and you can release the
No.
cards that
You can
need
either
to be
have
different.
millions of people adjust their culture, hundreds of thousands of people adjust how their what their behavior is.
Well, now
Or
you're
you have
arguing that everyone-
Blizzard just change the way they release changes. Like,
now you're arguing that everyone consumes the game at the same pace, and that's
no,
not
I'm
true.
not. I'm not
I
saying
think the
no.
majority of the
I said
players
hundreds
still
of
enjoy
thousands. I still said like hundreds of thousands, not like
And I still
70
think that's
million.
way overblown.
Not
I think
70
you're
million.
talking
I
about.
think so too.
I think at 50K, if 50K players experience the game the way that we're bitching about it,
Okay.
like I'd be surprised.
Yeah,
Alright.
Like that's how.
I just feel
Really?
I just
Okay,
feel
I
like
think
the
it's more than
vocal.
that, but
The
it's
people
like-
that you see watching YouTube are already more invested than the average person, probably. The people that are vocal about it play way more often. I just feel like we think that the game should be catered to us always, and the reality is that other people aren't experiencing the game the same way, and Blizzard knows
Okay, so
roughly what those numbers are.
You made that point about Kripp's video, right? Just like Kripp, telling all these people and accelerating people's experience, right? 278,000 people watched this video. So you're telling me what, a fourth of these people, or whatever, a fifth of these people aren't I guess in the same or won't feel the same way?
I think that it's very easy to get someone to agree with you when you make a video that's 16 minutes long and you don't explain the other side of the story. And I think that people are in a position where they're inclined to want to agree with it right off the bat before even starting the video. That's why they got to the video in the first place.
But that's my whole point, right? That's kind of just the culture of these things are that they're going to be influential people making content, and
I just think
it
that
just affects a lot of people.
I mean, definitely. I just think that from Kripp's perspective, he should maybe reflect on the fact that other people aren't playing as much as him and they aren't seeing these flaws. They're actually enjoying the game. And if he was to play any game as much as he plays Hearthstone, he would end up seeing these flaws because we usually don't experience most games like at the rate we experience Hearthstone. Solo player, co-op, anything.
Yeah, I will say one thing too. Is like one of the points that he brings up in the video from having a blip of it was the fact that the better player doesn't always win, even if he's got knowledge. Knowledge is one of the traits that I think he points to as something that matters less now than he used to, because knowing what your opponent's deck is doesn't mean you can play around the stuff he actually has, because he generated those cards through random means. And I think what he's saying is the knowledge should have a bigger weight in Hearthstone, and if there's RNG, it should not be in the cards that the opponent's holding. Like maybe one of the issues is like Mad Bomber doesn't bother him, but the generation of a random Flame Strike is so much more impactful that the weight of that card is bigger. The thing is, I don't see where the line is drawn in the sand as to what's acceptable, because
this is a general
you can
thing.
average out Juggler and play around Juggler when it's on the board, right? You can say you can, like, okay, I'm gonna put higher health minions that are gonna soak up more damage, but at the end of the day, like, it's the same thing with cards that they hold in their hand.
It's a different thing. I mean, both of them have their
okay, so here's like how many cards they play Primordial Glyph, right? How many cards can you instantly discount, like in Mage, that they would never pick? Almost, right? Like there's an array of cards that you just never would assume that no one's gonna take Shatter. Like there's a few cards you just don't think about. So then you look at the playables that come out of Primordial Glyph, and you're looking at Seekers that if they're playing a control game and whatnot. So you can assume that you're gonna get AoE'd the fuck out. Like you can assume between Meteor, Blizzard, Flame Strike, Cone of Cold, something's gonna come out that's gonna lock you on the board.
Primordial Glyph, sure, is something that's predictable, but Babbling Book is not. I mean, it's.
Well, Babbling Book is just, it's a case of a card that's, in Arena,
Like,
the thing is it's just playable. In Constructed, though, that card it's getting cut out of a lot of life.
The reality is that
we've argued about this point many
I mean,
times. Just
what
cards
Noxious is saying is like, if you look at somebody like, I play with a lot of people, and I think of Skaka is the best example that I know. He is playing around, if you can afford, if it doesn't decrease your like the state, like
your chance of winning. Yeah.
He's literally playing around these random effects, like here, 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 and here, like 5 turns in a row. And even if it's really small, like let's say you don't run Direwolf Alpha as an example, but somehow they mulch your minion and you get Direwolf Alpha. He's like placing correctly and then gets the Direwolf Alpha, and it works out, and he gets a trade that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise, and then he wins the game because he gets the face damage.
Right, sure.
Someone else might have just slapped their minions down, got Direwolf Alpha, it didn't work out, and they were like, then they lost, and they were like, wow, that guy kept drawing taunts. He got lucky. And it's like, there is percentages to game. Now, this is a really, really niche example, but I mean, this is just off my head.
But if you extrapolate to every outcome,
in Mage, like you can look at it and like it's even the
nobody,
most basic is meteor positioning, right? You can position against meteor, and there's a Reddit videos where Kripp gets blown up by meteor even when he positions because they like kill a minion or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm just, this is, again, this conversation is a kind of a different one, and one we've had before, where, adding cards to a person's deck, how does that actually affect just TCGs and just this type of card game in general, and preparing for it and playing around it. Yes, all the pro players have figured out, even more extensive ways to add even more skill to creating even small percentages for them to win that other people don't. So people are navigating it, no question about that. But overall, I think that's another conversation. But we've spent a ton of time on this, so we probably should move on just with Kripp's video. But we've got some Q&A emails now. So
the Heroic Brawl.
You want to? Dude, there's not much to say about that. I mean, it's just Heroic Brawl. I mean, he showed some stats on it. Obviously the stats showed that it wasn't very popular. A lot of people watched it but didn't play it, and I guess the argument is, would more people have played it if it was cheaper? Or would more people be interested in it from the playing standpoint, not from a watching standpoint?
Yeah, and I think that lower the price pool obviously gets more people in.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Obviously.
I don't think that necessarily that's good or bad. I'll tell you that I think that there's a team of experts working at Blizzard who decided this price point
of course,
very thoroughly, and they didn't just happen upon it. And I don't know, he used like the survey, but there isn't surveys of regular tavern brawls to compare to, so I really don't know what kind of weight the survey holds. Like, I don't know what percentage of the community is enjoying an average tavern brawl, or what percentage of the community is even watching people do regular. Like, no one streams regular tavern brawls. No one's like turns on their stream and they're like, I'm a tavern brawl player. So
they did for a while, but now the tavern brawls are just rehashed every single
well,
time.
you would have, honestly, the only ones I really liked were the ones where it was pure skill. Ragnaros versus Nefarian, 100% decklist reveal. Everybody knew everything about that, and it was down to getting those small edges when they mattered. Like, I think those were the ones I liked the most, because it was a puzzle. You had the decklist open and revealed, and you had to navigate the matchup in the exact same optimized fashion, ideally, every single time. It got old to a lot of people, but for me, that was a brilliant.
I mean, I think a lot of people play Tavern Brawl. I don't know what the percentages are, but a lot of people do, and that's why they're
casuals do.
Yeah, that is the casual
literally
game format.
I mean, I don't know how often they play. Like, you could say like a lot of people play Tavern Brawl. I know people enjoy Tavern Brawl, but I don't have any statistics.
Yeah,
I can tell you that my wife plays 100% Tavern Brawls. She does not play anything else in that game.
Towards it's a lot of people. It's like more people than we think.
He has some other points too about how, like, unless you get 12 wins, you don't make your money back, but that's just false. And then he's like, oh, but you could be like Kripp. After 7 wins, you get equal your packs and stuff worth in gold. And he's like, but that's not gold. But what is gold if not to get stuff to
spend on packs? Yeah.
Like, it's not like I could spend my gold on specific cards anyways, so I'm always taking a random chance.
Gold to get
anything,
packs
like,
is worse.
Getting like the golden legendaries is even better. Like, you definitely make your money back before 12 wins. And then he talks like, well, there's people who can't compete at the $10 prize point. I get that. And I understand that they probably want to compete in the tournament mode, and it sucks that they can't given the price point that's been listed. But at the same time, it's like, you don't have to be involved in everything. It's FOMO, right? Like, not everything a game puts out has to be for you, It's okay to sit back and be like, this time I just can't compete in this, or I can't do this. It's like, Wild right now, like, I don't want to craft the cards because it's actually a monetary investment that's not small for me, and that's going to result in me not being able to compete in the tournament, but that's how it is. Like, this isn't for me, and this isn't, and I'm okay with that, All
right. Yeah, so Heroic Brawl, I mean, it's something they're still playing around with, and I wish they would just do one iteration that was a little bit less, and then they could see what's going on there.
I think they would just release a tournament mode.
Well, that's asking.
So Frodan tweeted the first time they released a Heroic Brawl. Yeah, he told me.
All right, so let's do some Q&A, just some quick Q&A, and we'll wrap up. So Ahmed of course, just our regular question asker. Greetings from the land of Ancient Watchers. Do you think Blizzard should make a bundle gold option with some guaranteed drops to lower the gap of free to play, as adventures will go away? As adventures acted as kind of a bundle for these players. Yeah. So, should they offer bundles? I think we've talked a little bit about it in the past, but maybe never talked about bundle gold options.
Like you get an arena run 5 packs and a golden legendary or something.
Maybe just
I
something.
mean, I'm
kind
down
of
with
offering.
any.
Some kind of
Honestly,
offering.
like we've rehashed this topic a lot, and I
Yeah.
think I'll just end with. I think it would be nice if they added anything that let people get back into the game without expending, the full cost of the expansion. Basically.
Resurrection scrolls.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Those are
okay.
those are the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Those are
okay.
the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief on this topic. I think it's pretty well hashed out. First, I'll say that Blizzard is a leader in the space, which means that competitors are going to need to entice you to play their game somehow. So they're going to get you into their game by having an advantage of a lower price point most of the time. And that's the goal. They're going to give you more free stuff, so you play their game over Blizzard's game. That's an easy way for them to do that. It's it doesn't cost them anything, while Blizzard doesn't necessarily have to do that.
Yeah.
So just from an economic standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that there isn't these types of bundles. It isn't that you won't see the bundles in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that bundles are a good idea and that they keep players happy. So I think that definitely something Blizzard could look into. But I also understand why other games give out more free stuff than Hearthstone,
of course.
In theory.
Let's see. Tom has another question here. Your discussion on episode 121 about the environment and tournaments not always being the best for players made me think about some experience of my own. I've competed a lot in real-life shooting sports, and recently there have been a lot of changes in rules that make the sport more entertaining to watch, like loud music during events. This might bother the competitors but enhance the experience for the viewer. Do you guys think changes to enhance the viewer experience in Hearthstone could be justified, even though players in tournaments might have a hard time dealing with them? I think it's an interesting thought.
I mean, I think that I've been pretty fair on this over like my career. Like, I think that that's definitely a thing, and I think I'm actually closer to the viewing experience than most pros. It was just that last week when we covered the topic of B-dubs, I don't think that the viewing experience is
it's not better.
existent. I don't think it's existent even in this scenario. I don't think people are going to go to B-dubs to watch me play at B-dubs. I think that they might be more inclined even to go, or if I pushed it harder, to go, if Blizzard like made more of a market scheme for it, to go to B-dubs to watch prelims. Like, I don't think that they
That's
necessarily
kind of what I was getting at last week
go
too.
to experience it with me being there playing there. So I don't think I have to play there. But I'm all for a loud venue if I make it to like the Bahamas or Shanghai. Like, I get that. You want to bring in viewers, you want to fill the seats, you want it to be exciting, you want the loud noises. An example is BlizzCon, for instance. They have lights that change different colors now. You might not know this watching it as a viewer, but the light scheme at BlizzCon last year was actually programmed. Every single card has its own light sequence.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Castworks VSL programmed those.
Yeah.
Like, each card that was played in standard at that point had a different light sequence. And obviously the players don't want different lights flashing in their eyes, like they were complaining about it. But it adds to the viewer experience of the people there, not necessarily the people online. So it's a balancing act. Do you want a bunch of lights flashing in the players' eyes? Is it worth having the players there, people there enjoying it? And I think that that's something closer to what this viewer described in his question, where you need to balance that type of thing out versus where playing at B-dubs, it's like, there's really no reason
so
for me
I
to
do
be
want to add
there.
something, because a few innkeepers, especially Amy here, the one that's doing the one in Florida here, she did kind of map out, or at least explain some of the things that they are doing. And it sounds like they are, making the steps that will be, having the players kind of off on their own, and kind of, separating the players from necessarily the rest of the viewers there, and just the Wi-Fi situation or just the internet situation. Blizzard's given them, hardware to actually use, and they're working with like the IT folks at BW. So they're definitely, I think BWs will be fine, like as a venue. I don't think that's going to be an issue in the end. But
I covered it last week that they were upgrading their hardware and the internet. Like, I talked to an innkeeper who said the same thing to me, like that they were trying to make it a good venue, and I think that that's fair. I think that Blizzard could benefit from some transparency.
It still
in this
brings up to the
area.
point where it still brings up the point where what is the, outside of conceptual, from a practical standpoint, what is the point of having these kind of events that are pseudo fireside and pseudo prelim event, or just prelim events?
Mhm.
Like what is the point of it? Like if it's not going to be this giant kind of venue that you can really feel like like you're at a special event and that sort of thing. If it's just like one person, let's just say you have one person at this event and then you only have like 10 people watching him, then what is the point of even organizing things like that around the country, outside of the fact that you're trying to create as many locations that aren't super far away, right? I mean, that's about the only reason you're doing that.
It's funny because every time you do it wrong, it actually becomes harder to do it right the next time. Because every time you do it wrong, someone goes and experiences that and says, wow, this was boring. And they go tell their friends, and their friends don't go there the next time. Yeah. So it's like, you don't have an infinite time just to get it right. Like,
yeah, you don't have an infinite tries. You do at some point deliver.
So it's just, I don't know. I'm not, even if B-dubs is great for the player experience, I think that I worry about and this is a marketing question more than it is a Hearthstone question. There was someone in a room somewhere that's high up in Blizzard or wherever they are in Blizzard who decided that this would be a good idea, and I just don't think that they had the right people advising them, or people who could advise them in a way that would allow them to make the correct decision in this circumstance. There's not really much to say. Like, I think that anyone who's knowledgeable in the space who isn't controlled by any influences would tell you that this idea doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of marketing for B-dubs or anything.
So I think it could make sense. Well, not necessarily marketing and B-dubs, but I think it could make sense if, it was they at least allotted enough time to know who was going to be at each location, and because there are some players who, do qualify for just these prelims, and
Dog, for example.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like there's some big names, right? But also there's some names that are not big names, and I think those people are the ones that are probably most open and benefit from having local people come and support them. Because they never see people, they never actually see people rooting for them or ever, that sort of thing. So it might be reaching, but I'm just saying that's at least some kind of
misplaced. I don't think that they care at all. Like, they're not even usually local. It's not like it's in my town or something. Sure.
Like, I'm just trying to reach. I'm trying to figure out some kind of explanation.
Even for Dog, it's like, well, it's a chance for fans to see Dog. Do you think Dog wants to talk to all of his fans during the prelims? Like, I covered this last time. It's not like Dog's not a nice guy or whatever. It's just like, if a bunch of people, if it's like in Dallas and a bunch of people go to like be there and see Dog, it's like, I don't know. Do you think he wants all that as well?
Sure. And I was just
that's what I'm trying to say. Like,
but if you're gonna do this type of thing, it should be in fewer places and having more of them all together in just like a bigger type of event. So like the people are actually in the crowd, like they're not actually up on even close and at a bar and a tavern and being able to watch it like that, or have close access to all this stuff. So I think that's the one thing that I need to think about. It costs a lot, but
as to the specifics of what would be successful, like that's a long conversation. Yeah, but it's not that I'm not open to it. Like I said, if it was the Bahamas or Shanghai, I don't care if it's a big stage, if it's loud, etc., etc. That's just the environment that I'm gonna have to play in. It's supposed to be a spectacle. It's supposed to be for the viewers. There's reasons for that, and it benefits me as a player. That's why I can play the game professionally, is because people are going to go experience the game in this way, and that's how they enjoy experiencing the game. And I'm completely ready to understand that and cater towards that, honestly, like especially like that scenario. But I just don't think that this event is that. And if you want it to be, then you need to make it that.
Sure. All right, last question. Tiki Man. I used to play Hearthstone with my brother. We loved it until it got too expensive for him, on principle. He is now discouraged to play with me as I'm several expansions ahead of him because I kept buying packs. What do you all think about the type of friend where you can only select cards that both players have in his or her collection?
Yeah, that's actually an idea that I had when Hearthstone was around in the beta. I was saying it would be nice if I could actually, if we could like pool my cards and their cards to build the decks instead. You get to like share your collection with a friend when it comes to playing against them. It's just in the 1v1 scenario, and never in the case of like, they can ladder with your stuff. You can't lend them the cards. They're never gonna own those cards. It's just for 1v1. they can basically share those cards for deck building purposes. But
Yeah.
they could require a bit of an interface tweaking, but I think that would be great for the sake of introducing new people to the game. One of the things to keep in mind, though, is that if that's the only game mode people engage, then they never spend a dime, and Blizzard tells you to go fuck yourself, and that idea is the worst thing you've ever thought of, ever, period, ever. And yeah, just that's an issue.
And
So,
they know the math behind that. So.
yeah, and it's not worth it for them. I'm pretty damn sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you won't see that ever. It's
like
one of these ideas where let me just finish this this answer. It's like if I said, what do you think about Blizzard giving everybody 50k dust tomorrow so they can catch up? It's like, I'm a player. I'd love it. Fucking fantastic. Like, I lose nothing by having that happen, but Blizzard has no reason to ever do that. Unless they start bleeding customers, I guess, but...
Right. Yeah, I would say there is a semblance of this type of thing in certain tavern brawls.
Sure,
yeah. And I think that's maybe where they touch on it, or they get a little bit of their feet wet doing this type of thing. But, why not just have 1 week where, you just give them maybe even infinite amount of dust, and it literally only lasts for a week, and have them be able to play and experience all the cards. Isn't that a good way to kind of sell packs to people and try to get folks to buy packs too?
I mean, it's a marketing decision.
Yeah, of course.
They can make it. They can not make it.
Yeah. So in the end, it would be great. It'd be great if you could. It gets back to what we were talking about with just even social Hearthstone, just being able to play friend games. But in the end, they're not going to be motivated to do it unless there's a reason to do it.
It's such a tough, technically free to play. Like, there's so many videos criticizing it, but like, are there any solutions that take into account like Blizzard? Like, really? Because like, I just don't see many. Like, the week-long thing where they have free cards is something that they could definitely do. That might entice people to play. I think that's like a decent idea. But like, in general, like, it's just a tough problem because people expect to be able to play the game however they want to play it because they feel like that's how you experience games. Like, people would choose the Overwatch example. Like, I bought Overwatch of all the champs. I could play that forever and ever and ever. But like, that's just how this game is set up. Like, that's how the
genre is set up that way.
Set up. Like, you don't just buy the game. Like, you never bought the game, actually. It's like you never paid free. That $50 up front. And it has more upkeep, I think, than people think. But I don't think it's necessarily extremely high. But you got to wonder, like, what would be a price point at which you would be okay with Hearthstone? Like, let's say to get in initially, you had to pay like $50, and then every expansion you had to pay another $50. It's like, do you even?
It's cheap.
That's cheap for us.
That's
yeah,
right. But
how
much? How big would the player base be? No, but how big would it would be the tiniest shit ever. Can you imagine how many players would be playing Hearthstone and watching? No one.
How many games have you paid $49.99 on your iPhone? Like, never, right?
That's the thing. Like,
I don't even buy games that cost $50 in general. But I'm not a huge gamer like that. Like, I don't have like 1,000 games in my Steam or something.
I mean, I used to make games and apps, and I don't think I bought a game that was more than 99 cents ever, just on any of the apps.
And it's one of those things where, like, okay, let's assume even better than that, right? The game was free to play, and it was $50 to get all the cards.
Yeah, it'd be
if you did that, all you would do is you would basically lose money on the guys that already plan to spend cash. Because people who are willing to put $50, a lot of them are willing to put $300 because that's a card game for them, and they're just going to get all the cards anyway. So all you're doing is you're not really, like, there's no entry. You're not getting new customers because there are people who are going to be diehard free to play regardless of what you do. You could tell them it's $10 to get all the cards, but like, fuck that. I'm not paying a single cent for all these cards. I'm going to grind it free to play. Because for a lot of people, it's like just a principle thing, basically, where to them a mobile game is supposed to be free to play. They're going to play it for free no matter what. And that you tell them is going to be $50 instead of $300 to get a full set is irrelevant. They don't care. They're not going to put $50 in that game.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
That's pretty much what you have to understand. Like, And it's fun. Like, I'll close on that topic, but income inequality is actually, if you look at textbooks regarding monetization models of video games, income inequality is largely the reason why the freemium games work the way they do. As there is rising income inequality, you have rising gaps in the way that monetization happens. And this is the Hearthstone is no different. I think you should just, there's a broader problem going on, or a broader trend, I guess.
I wish I could ever experience the game as free to play. Like, for me, it's like Noxious said, like, when I played the game, I played Magic Online. I sold my Magic Online collection. I took my $400. I went to Hearthstone, spent $400 on packs, made Zoo, got to Legend. Like, it was like within 3 days. Like, there was no hesitation. Like, for me, that's just what you do. So for other people, that's not the case, and I get that. But there's I have friends. I have a friend, IRL. Last month, he played mid-range Control Paladin before it got popular. I don't know if he ended up finishing top 100. I'm not sure, but he was top 20 up until the last 2 days on Legend Ladder. He has not spent a dime on the game in 2 years. He has actually recently Frozen made a Ramp Druid deck, and I had to craft 2 cards for it. He had all the cards.
Yeah.
He had more cards than I have, being free to play. He just has less gold cards than I do. So he actually had more cards being free to play this entire time than other people. And I get that, like, you can't be free to play during a time period where you didn't play. So, like, to get new players into the game, it's kind of rough. And they do have the welcome bundle. Maybe they could have more bundles or more incentives. But I just don't know if it's worth it for them.
I mean, it's also, it could be that something that people don't have a problem with right now. It's only just certain vocal people have problems with. You know, a lot of people are just happy to play whatever deck that they like to play once or twice a day. That's it. And that's fine. So I'll
never defend the monetization, like the price point. I'll never support.
To be fair.
Say what?
I said I think the price of like packs is high.
Right. Like, I cannot defend the current price points of Hearthstone in general. I will never defend them. I will forever be in favor of the customer, quote unquote, to just get more stuff. But I don't think right now you can expect anything to be different. Like, just asking if I would like to see new things that help new players. Of course. Like,
that's an obvious.
It's like saying, wouldn't you love just free healthcare on top of not having to pay taxes? Like, I fucking would love it. It would be great, dude. I fucking dig it. But I can't have my cake and eat it too at this point. And
no, agreed.
It's
all right. Well, why don't we wrap up? I think we spent some long times on a few of those topics, but definitely some great things that came up and great discussion. Why don't we start some shout outs with you, Rat? Where can people find you, buddy?
At Th3rat on Twitter. If you're lucky enough to catch me streaming on Twitch /Th3rat. Shout outs to Splice. Shout outs to what we talked about earlier, Lifecoach.
Yep.
In general. And good luck to Strifecro on his new team.
All right, cool. Noxious, shout outs. Where can people find you?
Just a big shout out to Complexity as usual and yourself for putting the show together. The Rat's becoming like a common guest these days, so hopefully we get to have him again on the show in the future. It'd be good. And if you want to find me, Twitter is COL_Noxious. Not that I post anything worthwhile aside from memes. And on Twitch, Noxious_GG. All of these days, I'm gonna be casting a whole bunch, so it's kind of hard to find me stream Hearthstone.
All right. Awesome. I just thank the two of you guys for doing the show today and all of you guys for watching, given that I know there's a lot going on in the community, especially on these Wednesdays. But you can find the VODs for Value Town on youtube.com/ChanManV if you missed any of them or maybe any of our previous episodes. You can find them all there. Follow the show on Twitter at ValueTownGG as well as myself at ChanManV. And I want to give a last shout out just to our patrons, of course, that support the show, patreon.com/ValueTown. If you guys want to throw a quarter, $1, whatever our way. I mean, it goes a long ways, guys. It goes like super long ways for us. So, think about that if you really, really enjoy the show, as well as Game Coach for sponsoring this episode. Check out their site, game-coach.com. You can actually click on the graphic down below too. There's one there, or you might be seeing it in the chat. They're a coaching site that have coaches for Hearthstone as well as some other games like League of Legends and CS:GO and Overwatch. So definitely check them out and get some coaching today because the coaching goes a long ways, guys. Rad, do you ever coach or no? Have you been doing that at all lately, or no?
I mean, I used to coach
Mhm.
before I played on Splice. I mean, I have a coaching thing. You can book me, but it's like shout out to
Gotcha.
Exala Academy. You can book me on
Yeah,
there. It's not
jeez,
the
that's
same.
it.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
same company as the one that sponsors the show. Because I don't bring it up.
yeah,
Also,
gotcha.
I'm not cheap.
Yeah,
So
gotcha. Anyways, yeah, check out some of the coaches, obviously on game-coach.com, and become legendary. That's gonna be it, guys, for Value Town. So for Th3rat, Noxious, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next week. Later.